Welcome to the Tau extravaganza that is my collection. My name is Nicholas and I'm excited to introduce you to the Tau if you haven't played them before. I'm gonna try to tell you how they play, some of my favorite models, and where I would get started. I'll also walk you through a few lists that I enjoy playing and try to cover a few tips for playing one of my favorite armies in the Warhammer 40k franchise. Welcome to the greater good. Before you hear, I have assembled my entire collection of Tau Empire models from Games Workshop and a few third parties. I love the model range and the aesthetic behind it. I own a few other armies as well, but I keep coming back to my original love. Blue space aliens with pulse blasters and rail rifles shooting you across the table. So who are the Tau, you might say? Well, in my opinion, the Tau are only the coolest, most original army in 40k. A race of aliens dedicated to working together for the good of all. A concept they describe as the greater good. It's often their battle cry, for the greater good. Somewhere between a religion and a cultural creed, the greater good encompasses all ways of life in the Tau Empire. There's nothing nobler than to lay down your life in the cause of the greater good. On the surface, that seems like life would be cheap in the Tau Empire, but not so. One of the things I love about it is the Tau value the individual life. One for all and all for one kind of thing. Soldiers are given better armor than their human counterparts, for instance. They are more likely to retreat when facing insurmountable odds, and they try to save their people when defeat seems inevitable. And they use AI and drones to try and save lives. They are a highly advanced race, adapting quickly to battlefield conditions. They put less value in static defenses, and their doctrines are all about being mobile and striking at just the right times. Even their defenses have grav plates on them so they can move with the battle. I love the shield walls for that reason. There's so much more lore and depth to the Tau race than most people realize. They often focus primarily on tired memes about space communists and fish people. Okay, I want to clear this up right here and now. These are not fish people. They may name their vehicles and units after aquatic things, but that's just because the Watercast is in charge of naming everything. They have hooves. Look, hooves. If anything, they're cow people, not fish people. No fish. The Tau Empire in the lore is really the story of humanity in the 30k setting. Their hope and zeal starting on their grand crusade to save and liberate the galaxy. Except instead of a crusade of death and genocide, they first offer unity into the greater good before the sword. Countless alien races are already joined with the greater good, and billions of humans already live and fight with the Tau. They even employ them as guivesa, human helpers, auxiliary troops. It's one aspect of the lore that has so much room for development, and I'm hoping Games Workshop delves deeper into it. A great book that is probably one of my favorite Tau novels by Black Library is Broken Sword by Guy Haley. It covers how one human soldier joins the Tau. Now, how do the Tau play? Well, namely, we shoot things. From big guns to small guns. There are no true close combat units in the Tau range. We have a few models like Commander Farsight and Kroot that can do okay in assault. But often, if you're getting assaulted, you're in trouble and you've likely done something wrong. A smart Tau player is moving often to overwhelm their opponents by giving them multiple targets to shoot at from multiple locations. A lot of Tau players like to set up all their army in a big line or a castle and just shoot at you from there. And you can have success from there, but frankly, that's boring to play against and boring to play. If you're gonna play Tau, I urge you to learn how to use your units in concert with each other. Few other armies rely on other units helping each other out as much as the Tau. It's part of their philosophy. The big robots, for instance, have big guns, but they die quickly to concentrated fire, so you're gonna need to support them with shield drones to keep them alive. The Fire Warriors can put out a lot of shots, but they put out more when supported by a Fireblade. And across the board, marker lights. On average, the Tau's ability to hit is middling to poor. For an army relying on shooting, this is really tough. One way you can get around that is supporting units carrying marker lights. Think laser pointers. Get enough marker lights on a target and your units will fire more accurately and even ignore the enemy's cover. So before you here is roughly about 8,300 points, depending on how many upgrades you put on them. And you can put a lot of upgrades on different models. And that has historically been one of the cooler aspects of the Tau line. Take this crisis suit, for instance. The humble crisis suits, my favorite model of the entire line. There are 8 different weapon options and several different support systems that you can mix and match however you want. In this collection, I have actually 15 crisis suits. I'd love one day to play an army that is just crisis suits. They can deep strike anywhere on the board and have so much versatility, and I just think they're really cool. I love the Tau model range. I love how they look. I love how they play for the most part. I've been playing Tau since the very end of 5th edition 40K. Back then, when I was first starting, my buddy said, hey, you're thinking of Tau? Don't collect Tau. They are the worst army in the game. They always lose. And I took that as a bit of a personal challenge. I like the underdog. And so I started collecting them. And I lost a lot. You either won in the first turn or lost because you just couldn't bring enough firepower to bear. But I still collected them because I loved how they looked, and I loved the concept of long-range firepower, intelligent combat doctrines. It almost mirrors real-world combat doctrines where they're supporting fire and they help each other out, and transports will bring guys in and there's covering fire, and they're not scared of technology. They give themselves proper armor. And I know I get a lot of flack for this, but they really seem like the good guys to me. Now GW has kind of changed the fluff over the years a little bit to give them a bit more of a mysterious evil bent, whereas there's maybe some mind control happening or something like that. But if you look at some of the original Tau lore, it was very pure. Like, they were really good guys. Naive, yes. They hadn't really fully realized how much evil there was in the galaxy. But they really wanted to make the world a better place, and they truly seemed to believe that they could. And I love that about the Tau. It's probably my favorite part. And then there's just the models. Battle suits, being able to dive in whatever you want, and how they played. Originally, they played with crisis suits being able to jump in and jump out at will, and so you could jump out, fire, and then hide again. And how their doctrines focused on, instead of big giant robots, big giant planes that had more mobility. Everything was about being mobile, about not caring if you gave ground because all you did was lead the enemy into traps. Everything about them just seemed cool. And then 6th and 7th edition codexes for the Tau Empire came out, and it seemed suddenly like everybody wanted to play them because of one unit, the Riptide. At the time, there was this really, I want to say, broken formation called a Riptide wing, and basically you took 3 Riptides and they could all fire twice, and that was so powerful. And people hated playing against that. But there was a lot of people that jumped on the bandwagon of, oh, I'm just gonna take this to win. And it really put a sour taste in people's mouths. And it really sucked to be a Tau player for a while. And nobody wanted to face you. I would sometimes show up with a Tau army at my local game store, and people would say, oh, I don't wanna play you, I'm sorry, you're playing Tau. And that hurt inside, because I wasn't bringing that broken list. I usually had a nice range of stuff, and I usually brought the stuff that was fun to play rather than the stuff that was uber competitive. Now that said, I've had a lot of success with Tau. I've won tournaments. I have won games. I've also lost a lot of games. But I've always stayed true to that trying to play mobile Tau where you're jumping in the face of danger, blasting away, and scooting off to safety. I really want to play as mobile as I can and as hard-hitting as I can. The first game you might have seen me in, I played against a Chaos army, and I had a very aggressive Tau list. I took a Yavara, Breachers, I took a bunch of stuff that could go really close range. and I did fairly good. It's a risky move though, because you have to really get your movements right, and the dice have to favor you a little bit, because if they don't, you're left out in the open and you will die quick, especially to close combat. So you gotta be willing to risk it all to win. Sometimes though, I like to take a little bit more balanced approach. So I'll take a range of long-range weaponry, things like riptides and fire whirs, which can fire a long range off. Even things like sky rays. I actually really like sky rays. They have a lot of long-range firepower, and even when they're out of missiles, those marker lights hit on 3s, and +1 against fly. That's very valuable. And then I usually mix that in with some units that can deep strike. What the enemy will see is this wall of troops that they feel like they have to run across the board to. And as soon as they get to my side of the board, all of a sudden a big force of my army is on their side of the board. So then they have to make a choice. Do they go backwards or go forwards? And encompassing and circling my enemy, I often find leads to victory. When I first started, all the Tau models you saw on the store website and in White Dwarf, they were all this orange ochre color that was kind of like desert themed. It was the Tau sept. And it was cool. What I wanted to play was this white and blue and red themed, winter themed, and I saw this one sept that was Viola sept, and I thought, that's cool, I'm gonna do that. So I painted all my guys white. I really like playing stuff that nobody else is playing. I like being unique a little bit. And then GW decided to change all their box art and all of their promotional material so that all the Tau were white. And it sucked, because now it looked like I was just copying what GW was doing when I was trying to be original. It's very annoying. After GW kind of changed things on me, I started modifying my army a little bit. I started introducing blue as the central color of my army. And so since it was still the same accent color of my white, it still worked really well. Recently, I've always admired Farsight, but their rules were never really any good. So it was really tough to play Farsight. Recently, Games Workshop released some new rules for specifically Farsight enclaves, and it really enabled me to play them, the Tau, how I wanted to play them. Since 8th edition of 40K dropped, I've been wanting to play Tau more maneuverably, more aggressively, and the new rules from Games Workshop allowed me to do that. So I started painting up some Farsight. So I've got a contingent of Farsight enclaves. Farsight has this famous unit called the 8, which is 8 commanders that work together. And I love the models. I'm not 100% finished, but I'm really happy with where I'm going here. I actually used a metallic red by Turbo Dork. I really, really like it. It turned out really good. I actually started painting them more of a flat red, and then when I came across the red rum color from Turbo Dark, I had to repaint them all. Luckily, I'd only just base coated, so there wasn't much left to do. I love the concept of auxiliary troops in the Tau Empire. The Tau go up to an alien race and say, I think you should join the greater good. Try to convince them. And if they don't convince you, well, then they come in force. But if they can convince you, you can become part of the Tau Empire and serve the greater good. I love the concept of all these auxiliaries coming into the army. I actually started an Imperial Guard army and started converting it all to be a Tau Empire Imperial Guard, switching over guns and insignia. However, when 8th dropped, you no longer could ally Tau with Imperial Guards, so until they change that, I probably won't do any more work on that. I also have a unit of Vespid. I actually really like the Vespid concept, but I hate the models. It's probably the one unit in the Tau range that I really don't like. I actually made my own, and I'm really happy with how these looked out. I used some third-party wings from Puppet Wars and heads, shaved off some bits, added some knives from the Imperial Guard range, and I really like how aggressive I was able to make them look. I have a whole range of Tau flyers. I'd love to collect the entire set. I have the original Barracuda. They've now have a revision 2 of the Barracuda that looks a little cooler, but I've got the original. I love the original Orca, the big bus transport, how they got units to the table. I couldn't find one. I wanted to buy one, but they discontinued it on the website. So I 3D printed one. And I did a lot of sanding and a lot of work. And from a distance, you can't tell that it's 3D printed. And it's been a lot of fun to play. I've actually brought it to a tournament once. I took a list, 1,000 points. This thing is almost 400 points. It was almost half my army. But what was cool is I could put my entire army in it. So my deployment phase was really quick. 1 Orca, all done. I didn't win a lot of my games, but it was a lot of fun to play. I've got 2 Sunshock bombers. People tend to not like the new airplane models, but I really like the concept of the bombers flying over and dropping bombs. I've also got a Tiger Shark. Tiger Sharks are really cool. Third Forge World book, I believe it is the Taros campaign, is a Tau versus Imperial Guard combat on a desert world. And the Imperial Guard bring a bunch of heavy, stompy Titans, big giant robots. And the Tau seemingly don't have an answer for that until the Tiger Shark shows up. A couple of these with heavy rail rifles come zooming in, and the Titans of course can't target them because they're so fast, and they down the Titans, and the Titans withdraw. It just spoke to the practicality that they approached warfare with. Now, today you can buy the big giant Tau-Nar, and I'd love to own that one day because it's pretty cool. But it is a very change from the Tau lore. But it also speaks to how the Tau have progressed as a race. Originally, that was their doctrine. Airplanes were how they killed Titans. They brought big giant airplanes with big giant guns. But as battlefields got larger and it became more impractical to get airplanes to the surface, they discovered that big giant robots were needed to fight big giant robots. And that's how the range has evolved. It's actually kind of cool. Crisis suits originally only had access to about 4 weapons. And there was one experimental weapon that you could put on a commander model. Then in one of the future editions of the Codex, they changed it so that those prototype weapons were now the main weapons. And that's where we get to things like the cyclic ion blasters. They used to be prototype weapons that only Tau commanders could take. It's kind of cool because every codex kind of takes some of the prototype weapons, it seems to, and makes them real weapons. It's like it shows the technological progress of the Empire as it goes along. All in all, I hope you enjoyed seeing the Tau range. I don't have every model the Tau range offers, but I do have quite a few of them, from Commander Shadowsun to Commander Farsight, and I've really enjoyed painting this army. I really enjoy playing it too. I've played it a couple times on our channel, and every time it's been a joy. And I hope I've inspired you to think about the Tau range a little bit differently. It's a cool range with cool lore. It's fun to play. If you have any questions about this army or questions of maybe where I'm going with it or how I made certain things, feel free to ask us in the comments. We'll try to answer as many as we can. Thanks for joining us. Until the next time I see you, play on.